I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me.
The Hobbit, 1977, explored. Hi, I'm Simon Candlish, and welcome to Marvelous Videos. Any new content related to the Middle-earth is eagerly consumed by fans of the Tolkien universe. Despite that, Jules Bass and Arthur Rankin Jr.'s The Hobbit is often overlooked by fans, as it is old, animated, and mostly created for children as a family movie. It is pretty old, being released 44 years ago, and is therefore less flashy than the 2012 to 2014 motion picture films made by Peter Jackson. However, it does justice to the original story and also adds new approaches and elements to the film. Fans of the Tolkien universe have a lot to take in from what this animation film has to offer. So without further delay, let's dig into the plot of the film. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
Bilbo Baggins?
Bilbo Baggins meets Gandalf. This movie takes place, as the narrator explains, in a time when the ancient world was not as old, a time when elves, dwarfs, wizards, hobbits, men and dragons lived together and shared the land in Middle-earth. Our story started in the village named Hobbiton in the Shire, which was the home of the hobbits. In Hobbiton, there was a hobbit hole where our protagonist, Bilbo Baggins, lived a life of comfort. He was smoking a pipe right outside his hobbit hole when all of a sudden Gandalf appeared and told him his intention to hire Bilbo as the burglar for an adventure. Gandalf was accompanied by 13 dwarfs named Dwalin, Balin, Fili, Kili, Dori, Ori, Nori, Oin, Gloin, Biffa, Bofa, Bomber, and their leader, Thorin. After they had food, Thorin explains to Bilbo and his fellow dwarfs that the dwarf's treasure in the Lonely Mountain was stolen by the evil dragon Smaug, and they need Bilbo to steal it back.
Yes, just a dagger, actually, but for one of my size...
The journey begins. The next morning, they begin their expedition. They discovered 3 trolls while looking for cover from a rainstorm in the woodlands they were travelling through. Because he is a hobbit and consequently light, Thorin urged Bilbo to get meat from them. He and the dwarves are captured by the trolls, who then attempts to eat them. When the sun rises, Gandalf returns to save them and transforms the trolls into stones. When Bilbo discovered their cave, Gandalf and Thorin both took a sword for themselves, and Bilbo also took a smaller weapon. Gandalf suspected that the swords were stolen by trolls because they were very fine, and he claims that these fine swords were most likely not carved by trolls. He then hands Thorin a map of the Lonely Mountain, as well as a key to a hidden door in the mountain.
He is a liar, O truly tremendous one. Ask him to explain.
In the city of the elves, the elven city of Imladris, or Rivendell, is where they eventually arrive. Elrond feeds them there. Then Elrond scans the runes on the swords and explains to them what the names of Gandalf's and Thorin's respective weapons are. Glamdring, or the Foehammer, and Orcrist, or the Goblin Cleaver. The swords were Elven blade, he adds. The moon letter was then visible on the map when Elrond held it up to the moon. In order to observe the passage, the moon letter instructed the map reader to wait beside a grey stone until a thrush knocked on it. The dwarves and Bilbo then go on their quest and run into another storm. This time, they look for safety within a cave. When they enter, they discover that Gandalf has vanished once more and that goblins have taken the horses. Bilbo and the dwarves are captured by the cave-dwelling goblins whilst attempting to save the horses. Because Thorin was carrying the Goblin Cleaver, the Great Goblin, the Goblins' king, tries to eat him before Gandalf enters and kills him with the Foehammer, or Glamdring. While attempting to escape, Bilbo becomes disorientated and falls through a tunnel opening. They continue along their journey through the cave.
Hello, what's this?
Bilbo finds the ring. Bilbo ends up in another cave where a frog-like creature named Gollum lives in an underworld lake, and where he discovers a golden ring on the ground. When Bilbo asks him for the way out, Gollum challenges him to a riddle contest, with the stakes being that if Bilbo wins, Gollum will show him the way out, and if Gollum wins, Gollum will eat him.
What have I got in my pocket?
After a few riddles, Bilbo asks Gollum what he has in his pocket, to which he is unable to respond, and thus loses. He then decides to show him his ring, before showing Bilbo the way out, only to discover that it had vanished. When he gets to Bilbo, he puts the ring on and becomes invisible. Gollum searches for Bilbo, believing he has escaped because he knows the way out. Bilbo then chases him out of the cave, running past him.
I have not forgotten the arrow that brought me down so many years ago.
The eagles save the gang. After joining back Gandalf and the dwarves, Bilbo continues his journey. They are eventually pursued by goblins and their wargs. They scale a tree that the goblins have set fire to, only to be rescued by the eagles. The Lord of the Eagles agrees to do so because Gandalf treated his arrow wound a long time ago. The eagles fly them to the edge of the Mirkwood, where Gandalf leaves them, giving Bilbo a command and asking him to keep a log of his journey to the Lonely Mountain. Bilbo discovers his courage. While exploring the Mirkwood, spiders grab the dwarves and Bilbo. By using the sword to kill a spider, Bilbo is able to flee, and he gives the spider the name Sting. He frees the dwarves from the spider's web, and they flee away from the spiders as he saves them. After Bilbo makes the decision to remain behind and dons the ring to engage in combat with the spiders, they flee. When Bilbo finally locates the dwarves, the Wood Elves have already taken all of them. Thorin is questioned by the Elven King as to what they were doing while exploring the forest, but he chooses not to respond because he is so eager to find the wealth. The king then gives the command to imprison Bilbo and the dwarves. Bilbo eventually finds a way out. He stole a key from the drunken prison guard with his ring. He uses this key to free the dwarves from their cells. He then instructs them to enter the empty wine barrels while riding on top of one, floating down the river from Mirkwood to Lake Town. Thorin says that he is the king under the mountain's grandson in Lake Town. They continue their journey toward the Lonely Mountain after being offered food by Bard, the guardsman, and his men.
I won't refuse.
Good luck.
Thank you.
The prophecy comes true. When a thrush raps on the rough stone, Bilbo discovers the hidden door and Thorin uses the key to open it. Then Thorin requests that Bilbo steal the riches. Then, wearing the ring to be invisible, Bilbo enters to steal the loot from Smaug. As he speaks to Smaug in riddles, Bilbo notices a vulnerability in him, a tiny unarmored area on his chest, right below his neck. Smaug pours fire on Bilbo when he becomes visible after noticing that he was carrying a gold cup along with him on his escape. Smaug, who believes that Bilbo is from there, sets out to destroy Lake Town as retaliation. Bilbo requests the stone-knocking thrush to inform the people about Smaug's vulnerability in order to save the villagers. Bard uses a black arrow to kill Smaug when he enters Lake Town, thereby saving Lake Town.
5 armies now?
The five-way battle. In order to make Bilbo aware that he'd been crowned king and that Smaug had been killed, Bard then leads his men and their army to the Lonely Mountain. He asks for a portion of the loot to aid in the reconstruction of Lake Town. Thorin declines, but Bilbo was eager to do so since he thought they could split the riches fairly. Following this, the army of the Elven King arrives with the intention of obtaining the treasure, which Thorin once more rejects. The result is a conflict involving the elves, men, and dwarves. As the three armies arrive at battle, Gandalf comes back and lets them know that an army of goblins is on its way. Because the elves, men, and dwarves all shared a hatred for the goblins, they decided to band together against the goblins. They were losing the war until the eagles arrived to assist them, changing the outcome of the battle and turning it into a battle of 5 armies. The joint forces of the elves, men, dwarves, and eagles successfully defeated all of the goblins. 6 out of the dwarves who started the journey together, however, are killed. Thorin is mortally wounded and dies as a result of his injuries, but he remains friends with Bilbo.
What do you mean, believe it has come to an end? It has.
The ending. Gandalf tells Bilbo that this was only the beginning of his adventure, as he returns to the Shire with only 2 bags of gold as his part of the loot. The film concludes with Bilbo promising to publish his story, which he believes had come to an end, despite Gandalf's convictions, and placing the ring on a mantle within a glass case. Differences between the movie and the book. Even though the movie is very faithful to the original story, there are some differences, as the movie at the core is a children's-orientated musical adaptation, and therefore not a perfect adaptation of Tolkien's adult elements in the novel. The changes found in the movie are mostly omissions rather than being modifications of the plot. Some of the changes are as follows. In contrast to the novel, which is aimed at teens, young adults and adults, the 1977 animation adaptation of The Hobbit is G-rated and catered to considerably younger audiences. It lasts 77 minutes and 51 seconds from start to finish. Both the presence of the Arkenstone and Bilbo's Took-Blood is not mentioned in this version. Despite not being late, they force Bilbo to leave his house with the dwarves. The night after hearing about the treasure, Bilbo also had a dream in which he is a king with mountains of riches, which is very different from the Bilbo in the novel, who has no such dreams. They never travel to Beorn's house. Instead, the eagles dump them down near the border of Mirkwood, which is one of the three biggest distinctions. Last but not the least, during the Battle of the Five Armies, not only are the armies different, with the wargs being replaced by the eagles and Thorin never calling for the assistance of other dwarfs than the 13 of the company, but a total of 7 dwarfs lie dead versus the 3 of the company that died in the book. Bilbo also never asks Gollum the "what's in my pocket" question during the riddle game. Movie animation technique. Before beginning this production, Rankin Bass was well known for their stop-motion animated Christmas specials, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. They said that they wished to adopt all 4 of Tolkien's well-known books into films, but the rightful owners of the works forbade them. However, because The Return of the King and The Hobbit shared the same domain at the time in the US, it was decided to adapt both books into films. The narrative economy of animation movies was impeccable. The entire narrative is told in 77 minutes while staying true to the fundamentals and without trying too many new things. Even though the film was made for a younger audience and has a lot of oddly awkward scenes, it shows a lot of respect for Tolkien's original writing. The most alluring aspect of the animation is its aesthetic, which was developed by Tokyo's now defunct Topcraft Studio. These creators later founded Studio Ghibli, where they made substantial contributions to Hayao Miyazaki's canon of masterpieces. The Hobbit has a lavish, unique appearance that perfectly captures Tolkien's characters. At the time, even live-action movies would have struggled to capture Tolkien's realm, but the stunning animation in this film succeeded in conjuring Middle-earth in a way that was unimaginable. This adaptation of The Hobbit is worth revisiting and serves as an excellent introduction to Tolkien's universe, despite being eclipsed by Peter Jackson's lavish live-action films that were produced years later.
Our original 13, how many are left?
7.
Conclusion. This is a great film which is filled with adventure, excitement, fantasy, wonder, and a lot of action. The greatest quality of the film is in its commitment to accurately describe the plot of the novel. There's also a strange quality about Rankin and Bass's animation style. It has a kind of authenticity and realism that other animation styles like that of Disney completely lack. There's a certain strangeness in the way things are drawn. For example, the wood elves have really long legs and green skin. They also have inhuman features like wide cheekbones and flat brows. In comparison to the humans that appear in the film, they look completely different. They do look like a completely different species. The voice acting is amazing too. John Huston's the voice of Gandalf is absolutely wonderful. His smoky and intense voice relates to a sense of wisdom and knowledge of things and other worlds. There's a certain tone to his expressions and a steadiness that makes it seem like he's reciting a dialogue or an incantation instead of merely speaking. The music is also worth mentioning. It has a 1970s folksy feel to it that is really lovable. Many of the songs are adaptations of songs originally written by Tolkien. A more subtle feature of the film, which is very appreciable, is the colour palette of the film. There is a subdued quality in the film's colour palette. The range of colours is very soft and very natural. It creates a truly wonderful effect. An important character in The Hobbit is the wildlands itself, which is beautifully portrayed in the film through this colour palette. Also, the portrayal of forests, river valleys, the desolation of Smaug, their colouring and the fine details of the rendering make it look very authentic. You can fall asleep to this film after a very tiring day, as the viewing experience is so pleasant. It wraps your senses like a soft, comfortable blanket. The movie, with exactly the right music, voice actors, and style of animation, truly stirs in a sense of wonder, like a childlike wonder almost. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.